Wow. What a
Woo!
song.
What an
I
intro.
I'm so pumped up. Um I love this new intro song. I'm feeling jazzed. I'm ready to take on this day. Brandon, how you feeling? How you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling incredible now. It's been beautiful here in Northern California. The weather's just been 70s and sunny, and so I've started swimming again. I got a gym membership again. They have this beautiful outdoor pool, and I say this because I got some laps in this morning before work, and that already kind of gets my blood flowing. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
better than drinking 10 cups of coffee for me. So yeah, that combined with this intro music, I'm ready. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah. We thought we're like, should we just keep using the normal intro music? And now we've got this new intro music, and it's like new year, new us, new website, new intro music. We've got it all.
Podcast.
New podcast. We're growing. Things are happening. Yeah. Ooh, we've got PJ says, could you play that song again? It goes boop, beep, beep, bop. Exactly.
Precisely.
Yes, yes. I couldn't have put it better myself. Brandon, how has your week been? What have you been up to since we last did the show last Wednesday?
Yeah. No, it's been a really good week so far. This week is the MVP summit at
Oh,
Microsoft.
yes.
So our most valuable partners, I believe, is what it stands for. Um, they all get to check out kind of the insider stuff at Microsoft, and so what
Yeah.
that means, and the reason I'm being kind of cagey when I talk about it, is because the MVPs are all under NDA. So when
I
you're
saw a very
granted
funny tweet about this. Yes.
yeah, so when you're granted MVP status, you're also kind of read in. You get the inside scoop on what projects we're working on because, yeah, there's a lot of things that don't make it off the cutting room floor at Microsoft, and I'm sure that's true with a lot of large companies where, like, hey, let's try something. Let's see if we can do it. B, let's see if people even want to use this. And so we, the MVPs are always our first previewers of all the cool tech we've been working on. So I got to
Yeah.
sneak into a couple MVP sessions. I mean,
Ooh.
Microsoft employees are able to join, so I did. It wasn't that hard to sneak in, but yeah, it's been so exciting seeing all the details, and I wish I could talk about it, but I guess we'll just say stay tuned. Microsoft has conferences coming up throughout the year. That's usually where we announce it to everybody, but there's some really cool stuff coming for .NET developers, so stay tuned.
I saw a very funny tweet about this that was like, it was a Microsoft MVP, and they said, I'm so excited about redacted at Microsoft due to NDA. And I was like, yes, it is MVP summit time.
It's very true. Like, there's some things that I didn't even know about, and I was like, we work at Microsoft, but again, it's a
Right.
big company, so there's been some things that have debuted, at least for me, during this MVP summit. Like, what? I can't wait to talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
But
Is it
legally,
Clippy
I have to.
related? I've got Clippy on my shirt here, y'all. I'm
I love
sporting.
that shirt.
This is a shirt that I got off. The Instagram algorithm targets me pretty aggressively, and it targeted me with this word art shirt that says all kind of things like thankful and 100% energy and like self-love. And I thought this is such a great shirt because we're not getting to our guest yet, but we're having a continuation of our conversation of retro tech today. So I figured this and my hat, my word perfect office hat, were the perfect accessories for this chat
You,
today.
you look great. It's very on
Thank
brand for
you.
today's show. And
Thank you. I wanted to just look like a walking GeoCities page is what I was going for. So fashion's important to get that point
very
across.
accurate.
It's so interesting that it is the MVP summit this week because I feel like there's so many exciting Microsoft events happening right now. Brandon, I participated as a judge and a mentor in the Imagine Cup since last we spoke. So much has happened. My life has changed. I'm so inspired by these kids. I call them kids because most of them are 16 and above students who are competing for the chance at the Microsoft Imagine Cup, where they get to see their project turned into a reality. And oh my goodness, when I tell you, so I participated, let's see, this would have been last Wednesday night with
Ooh.
these students all over the world, everywhere from New Zealand to China to the US, everywhere, all of these amazing projects. So it's not only MVP Summit time, it's Imagine Cup time. And this morning were the finals, I believe, not the
Oh, really?
championship, but the yeah, so the number is slowly getting rounded down. It's very exciting. And if you have not checked out the Imagine Cup or know what the Imagine Cup is, oh my goodness, take a peek at the projects that are happening this season. I'm so impressed. I truly believe, Brandon, that these kids are going to be our bosses someday. They're making awesome projects. I'm very inspired by them. If you've never heard of the Imagine Cup before, in previous seasons, I guess, or previous iterations and years. So many amazing projects have come through this, like, oh my gosh, robotic arms. And, you know, the projects that I got to look at and judge varied from everything from cattle tagging IoT projects to masks that displayed, you know, visual cues based on what you said with a neural net microphone. So many awesome things. And it makes me want to just go back to school and pretend that I'm 16 and participate because it's very, very cool. And I feel these kids make me like feel very excited to even be a part of this journey. So I got to judge and I got to mentor one of the teams, and it's been so lovely. So check out the Imagine Cup. It's incredible. If you're looking to get inspired and feel very lazy compared to what you're doing, it has been an awesome sight to see. Have you ever participated in the Imagine Cup, Brandon?
Not as a student. I didn't know about it as a student. And I mean, to be honest, I wasn't that good of a student, so I probably wouldn't have done it even if I did know about it. But
the unimaginative cup. Was.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get into tech until college. So that's where I started writing code. That's where I started playing around with circuit boards and electronics. When I was a kid, I was just big into like computers and video games, which I don't know if they had an Imagine Cup about like, maybe it's like video game speed running. I could probably do that, but no, I did host, or I'm sorry, I mentored a team a couple years ago. I think it was the year before the pandemic, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, they made an AI app to help mitigate bullying in schools. So they created an API where you could upload text, or the idea was if there's like emails or Facebook feeds or wherever the text may come from, you could upload it to their API and it'll parse through it and tell you, is there any bullying going on? And so it's a really great app, but my team didn't make it out of the US. So I think we got 6th, which is good, really good.
Ah.
But yeah, the Imagine Cup, the finals take winners from, okay, is it every country, every region around the world? So there's usually teams from all around the world that have created amazing projects, and it is a really, really cool thing that, yeah, I wish I had known about when I was a student.
They're solving all kinds of incredible problems that are out there. And oh my goodness, good luck to everyone participating in the Imagine Cup World Final Championship, I believe. I'm like, what are the actual words? I feel like such a pageant mom because I've been, you know, I'm mentoring. I'm very emotionally invested in this now. So good luck to all the participants. But we've got a special guest today. We're talking about, you know, all the new coders. Let's talk about, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We stand on the shoulders of Clippy. I've got Clippy on the bottom of the shirt here. You can't really see it. I think this guest doesn't really need much of an introduction because we have had them on the show before. Should we just bring them in, Brandon?
Absolutely. Brian Benz, welcome back to the show.
Welcome,
Brian. I was laughing my head off behind the scenes there over the, you know, talking about the MVP Summit stuff and all the NDA stuff, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really great to see all the things that are going to be happening, and the joke about I'm really excited about Redacted. That's great. That's great. I'm looking forward to them as well. I mean, Microsoft Build is coming up, and I'm sure everyone out there would like to know the dates for Microsoft Build.
Yes.
And so would I, because they're.
I was
I just wanted to
going to ask you, do you know them? Because I don't.
tease a little. But yeah, no, there's actually a lot of speculation out there outside of Microsoft, but I personally inside Microsoft haven't heard the final dates either. So, but Microsoft build usually happens in spring, and that'll be the next thing that comes up. And I suspect a lot of the things that they're talking about the MVP Summit will be covered at Build as part of big announcements. So yeah, absolutely.
So for anybody who wants a sneak preview of Build every year, become an MVP. Because then you'll know before everyone else. And then you can tweet very ambiguous tweets about how excited you are. Brian, last time you were here, we started our deep dive into retro tech. And we only got to, we finished kind of like mid to late 80s.
Yeah, I know.
How should we catch up everybody who missed our first episode? First of all, you can go back and watch the prequel to this, of course. Yeah. But
head over to 8bits.tv and you can find the last episode with Brian. If you haven't already listened to it or watched it, that's where you can find the podcast and actually every episode in the catalog.
Yes. Brandon, should we attempt a quick recap? I'm trying to think of all the things that we mentioned on the last one.
Woo! We talked about flying toasters.
Yes, important topic.
We talked about punch card programming.
We did. We talked about jigglers, the mouse
jigglers.
Mouse wigglers.
Early forums of, early web forums and what it used to be like to travel around when you before the web connected everything together and actually working at companies and things just before that as well. T1 lines and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah.
We also saw your incredible website, Brian.
Yes, that's right.
The chat was going wild for that.
Yep. Hand-coded, folks. If you want to see some original HTML written in Notepad and saved and open in a browser, check that out. Yeah.
But we really only got to, it was kind of perfect because we stopped right before Y2K, kind of. We were right in that 90s, 2000s sweet spot. So where do we begin? Where do we pick up, Brian?
I was thinking, I was going to start with Comdex because we didn't mention Comdex before, and it's such a big part. So before, in Las Vegas, I live in Las Vegas, out in the suburbs, and before the Consumer Electronics Show, which is probably the biggest show in the world for anything. I believe it's 125 to 150,000 people come every year. They fill the entire
CES, right?
Yes, CES, Consumer Electronics Show. And before this, the Consumer Electronics Show was Comdex. Okay. So Comdex was the big computer show. Bill Gates used to do a keynote there every year for about, 5 or 10 years. And it was just everything that was everything to do with computers before the internet was on at Comdex. And one of the things I wanted to mention was, where you could get flying toasters. So we talked about flying toasters last time. People would go to an event like Comdex and they'd look for the shareware table. If you walked into Comdex in 1995, there would be this massive booth right at the entrance. Everyone would have to walk around it. And it would be basically these picnic tables set up with boxes of diskettes. And on the diskettes, you could buy them. There was bulk pricing. And you could buy the diskettes. And on the diskettes was shareware and freeware. So shareware was something where you're supposed to pay for it before you can use it. And freeware was it's just free. You can use it. But it's really the precursor to open source software.
And when you say diskette, we're talking floppy disks?
Yeah.
Save icons?
We're talking floppy disks and then the little ones. The little, the kids out there will be familiar with the save icon on most things. If you blow that save icon up, that's what a diskette looked like.
Increase it in size. Don't explode it.
Oh, well, yeah. Apologies. Yes, but that if you zoom in on that's the diskette. So these things were basically the premium way that you could transfer things around. And then I remember those are the two things I remember from Comdex. There was always the electronics and the cool, hardware, but everyone would get their diskettes. And some people would bring an extra suitcase. They can go and fill it up with diskettes and bring it home. And by the way, you didn't have a laptop back at your hotel room or anywhere you could plug this into. It was like there were like these desktops, and they had these things called luggable laptops, which were not laptops at all. They were a normal computer, like if this full size desktop computer case, that with a little monochrome screen tacked on the front of it, and some places where you could put diskettes. That was kind of the thing you could get back in the olden days. And so you didn't have one of those with you. You would go home and then see if the diskettes actually worked and if there was anything cool on them. And I remember around 97, 98, there was a new innovation that came out, which was called the iOmega zip drive. I don't know if anyone remembers that.
I had one of
Omega
those.
zip drive. I have to look. I
They
have to
were
bing
amazing.
this. I feel like I had one.
Yeah, and you probably did. And those things were really innovative because you could store a whole bunch of stuff on a portable medium that wasn't much bigger than a diskette, than a 3.5-inch diskette.
Not only did I have one of these, I have one of these now. Because I cannot part with my saved Sims 2 games. Like, I need to know that I can be able to access them, even though I do not have an iMac anymore to play them on.
Wow. So you still have one? Okay, I don't.
Oh,
I think I probably have some diskettes, but I don't have the actual zip drive. Wow.
I'll have to tweet out a picture of it later. Maybe I should make some art out of it or something.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though. In 1998, everything kind of changed. Everything started becoming interconnected, and you didn't really need the diskettes so much anymore. Big innovation again, CD-ROMs. So CD-ROMs came out, and you could store a whole bunch of information, and people started downloading things to forums on CompuServe, on AOL, all kinds of things started happening. And then there was a whole bunch of talk about different formats that people should be using for sharing information and stuff. I mean, HTML was out there, and people saw my 1997 website, but then XML. XML was the big deal in 1998. And I remember that Bill Gates got up on stage at Comdex and made a really a fairly long speech about how XML was going to be the standard archive format of the world, and how that you could actually store all kinds of information. It would be preserved for eternity in an XML format. And that's really when things started to change in terms of connectivity and things like that. And then programming languages started to come out, and we mentioned last time about how the internet actually helped build standardizations for things. And one of the groups that came out of that was the W3C, so the World Wide Web Consortium. And they live kind of behind the scenes with XML. And other standards that they put together, HTTP, HTTPS, all those standards are kind of managed behind the scenes by the World Wide Web Consortium. And people probably don't know that. But, look at that. Yeah, there we go.
I found this image. Look at this Las Vegas neon here, right under this vintage Microsoft logo. I want to go to there. This looks like a party I want to go to.
This is Comdex?
This is Comdex, and ironically, I tweeted out this. I said, we're talking about Comdex, and someone said, I was there in 1998, and yes, I have a T-shirt. I wish I had that T-shirt. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and that's what's going to... So in 1998, then, that person probably, I don't know if they remember, but Bill Gates did his big speech then about XML and how it was going to change everything. And I was working on... I was a Lotus consultant because they had this thing called Lotus Notes where you could build client-server applications and you could do things like replication and sharing data across the world. And it was way ahead of its time. It was pretty cool. But the speech about XML really resonated with me. And I actually became an XML consultant. And in 2003, I put out an XML book called the XML Programming Bible. You can still buy it on Amazon, by the way. There's just a few copies left. But it's still useful because frankly, XML hasn't been updated that much since 2003.
Still
But
going strong.
yeah, it's kind of the way it is now. But so what happened was there was this big explosion around 1998, and everyone talks about the dot-com bust, where financially things really did go south in 2004. Big websites. And Seth, yes,
Seth, you have to come on the show and show us your GeoCities page. I mean, open invite. We love to see it.
Yeah. For anybody listening on the podcast, Seth Juarez just let us know in the comments that he found his 16-year-old GeoCities page as he was joining us for this nostalgia rabbit hole. That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember though it was cool. I mean, GeoCities, GeoWorks. Remember GeoWorks? It was a whole operating system competing with MS DOS at the time, and it was this whole thing where you didn't need Microsoft technologies to run your applications on a PC. You can use GeoWorks, and they made a little effort at an Office product and a few other things. But back in those days, there was actually several Office products to choose from too. There was Microsoft Office, there was Lotus Symphony, there was WordPerfect Office. Chloe's shirt, Chloe's hat. Sorry, that was like there were all kinds of different things, and the business was really fragmented. I mean, it was really interesting. But the main thing, the reason why all these things were developed, is there was all kinds of financial interest all of a sudden in computers. People started to realize that this was something you could make substantial money from. Bill Gates was in the news constantly about the growth of Microsoft, and the first that was probably one of the first big tech stocks. And I remember in 1995 or 96 in Comdex, I remember seeing some guys that were walking around in tweed jackets and they were smoking pipes. And they clearly were not part of the technology gang out that's usually hangs out at
Don
Comdex.
Draper vibes.
Yes.
Okay.
I was like, okay, these guys are really different, and they weren't asking any questions. They were just looking around, puffing their pipes indoors, of course. Different world back then, and just looking around at all this stuff. And the pipes really stuck out in the tweed jackets. But I could tell, these were like Wall Street financial guys, and they were wearing some sort of uniform that, showed that. It was just interesting. And after that, I really saw a real big interest in financial efforts. And this actually, so there was all kinds of things that came out of that. I mean, .NET really grew around there. Java grew out of that. XML and the web, World Wide Web Consortium was funded, and all kinds of things happened that really changed the world around that time. And most people around 2000 tend to focus on the either Y2K or the dot-com bust, which happened around that time. But that was all financial. The money that was invested in a lot of these technologies did not go to waste. And it really did usher in the new era that we're still living with now. Including music and other things as well. I mean, from that was born MP3, video formats, document formats. Actually, I did want to show a little demo. I was mentioning XML before. Is this a good time for that?
Absolutely. We love a demo.
Share your screen right now.
So I talked a little bit about XML. And I talked about how XML was so important back in the day from like 1998 to 2003. There were even magazines about XML, and it was really sort of a big thing that was happening. And after 2003 or so, 2004 through 2005, actually, XML just kind of faded into the woodwork. It's still there, but it's just part of the fabric of the internet, of data and everything now. And I did want to show a demo of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some music later, but here's some of the music from the 80s. I'm a big fan of electronic music, and
I love some of these songs. I was in an 80s cover band in college, so I got some of these in my back pocket ready to go.
Absolutely. I mean, these are some cool. I used to love Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, Pet Shop Boys, Howard Jones, Kraftwerk was a big one for me. All these bands, and people are surprised because a guy my age, they look at me and go, "Electronic music, really?" aren't you supposed to be a Rolling Stones fan? Which I am, but it's sort of. I really like electronic music, and the reason why is because it really started in the '80s with synth pop and techno pop and all that stuff. So anyway, I digress. This is a Word doc, and people might notice when you're working with Word or Office files, there's an X at the end of the file. They used to be called, like Word used to be a doc file, DOC. Now it's called DOCX as of, I can't remember what year, but early 2000s. And the reason for that is this, you're actually looking at an XML file. So if I go into my File Explorer here, and I'm just going to make a copy of this, and I'm going to paste it, and then I'm going to rename it. And this works for pretty much any Office file. People don't realize this. It gives you a warning. It might become unusable, but it's not unusable. Look at this. I can open this up.
And so what you've done, you've changed the docx file extension to .zip.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the docx is just a zip file?
It's a zip file with a bunch of XML documents in it. So if I open Word and I go into Document, oh boy, this brings back memories. I can actually see the XML that's underpinning this entire document. And there's just a ton of stuff here, actually. And you see, now these are schemas. For those of you who aren't familiar with XML, schemas are something that actually is formatted for, it's a way of ensuring that you comply with a format, right? So actually, let's try this. I haven't tried this before. Let's just do it live and see if this works. But I'm going to open one of these. No, it's not there anymore. But in the olden days, you could open one of these links, and it would actually go to an actual schema reference that was there.
Wow.
And the idea was you could go to that reference and check your file against the schema to see if it worked properly. Anyway, boring stuff, but it's kind of cool because I can actually show you in here. Here's the actual text inside this Word document.
It was XML all along.
It's right there. The X at the end tells you it's hidden back there. And yeah, it's kind of cool. So people don't know, but this is just a great example of XML used to be a big thing. And it's still there, but it's just sort of hidden behind the scenes now. Like if I go into my settings doc, there's a whole bunch of settings here for this particular document. But you can see there was a whole bunch of things that went in behind the scenes in these Word docs that made it the way it is. And this is what it looks like when you're viewing it. But there's an actual viewer, and there's all kinds of things that happen behind the scenes to convert all that XML into something you can read in Word.
It's auto-generated XML, which
yes,
if anybody's listening along and can't see it, it's not pretty.
It's not.
I would not want to try and debug this XML.
Yeah.
No. This is all. The software keeps track of everything, but
so
I wouldn't want to do
really
that.
what you're saying is Microsoft Word is just a prettifier for XML.
In a way,
What?
Yeah, it's a viewer.
I know, mind blown. You heard it here first.
It's a way to pretty print your XML docs. Yes.
I'm gonna never look at Word the same way again, and I love that we answered. Like, I always wondered why it changed to docx. In fact, my dad is always asking me why, because he recently updated his Microsoft Word. So, mystery solved. Oh my god!
Impress your friends. There you go. Fun for parties.
Look, Dad's catching up because even Joe and Paul in the comments said if he's not mistaken that the docx format was introduced in 2007. So,
Ooh,
2021, Dad's getting on board the Office 2007 train.
I've got my Windows Server 2008 hat here, so we're all about the nostalgia on this episode.
Absolutely. I mean, it started around, I'm going to say 1998, 99, but yeah, XML. So there was the Open XML. There was a whole bunch of projects about Open XML and having things, and there was standards. standards, let's call them struggles, where people wanted to have one way and other people wanted to have it a different way. And
sounds familiar. Sounds like some of the debates we have nowadays about Kubernetes and various things. It's interesting to see how the landscape changes and how. Well, I mean, we're still using XML every single day in Word, so look at us.
Yeah, and anything with the X on the PowerPoint, the PowerPoint, PPTX, others, they're all with you can change it to a zip and you can look in it with varying degrees of success. PowerPoint's a little more complicated because there's a lot of images in there and stuff. But yeah, that was a real thing back then. I mean, it was you could make a living as an XML programmer, and I did. I worked with Lotus Notes for a while. I was a big Lotus Notes partner, and then I worked with Java and XML. Those were the two things starting in 1998. So I went to an event called Lotusphere 98. This was a massive conference. One of the, it's probably like the third biggest conference ever, every year back in the 90s. And they had this thing on the back of the hat called Lotus eSuite. People will probably out there might remember this. So Lotus eSuite was written in Java. And, back in the day, I started working with Java in the very, very early days when you had to write it in Notepad and then go into your command line and do a compile to see if it actually worked. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so that combined with XML really did sort of change the format of things. And, C# came out around that time as well. And that was the same idea. There were all kinds of libraries for working with XML, and there was ways of actually programmatically managing things. .NET actually was growing around the late 90s as well as part of that. I'm trying to remember when Linux came out too, but I think it was around that era as well. But yeah, so everything sort of started exploding. And the reason for that was there was funding available, through Wall Street and other means. There was funding that came in and started to become available for all this stuff. But man,
I'm having trouble finding images of Lotusphere, but I'll share my screen here. It doesn't seem like there's any images from the 90s, but I did, however, find this T-shirt available, Lotusphere, the Pirates of Collaboration T-shirt. Yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, here's another Lotusphere backpack here for only $100.
And there's my buddy Ed Brill. So Ed Brill's there. That's the guy on the right. That's Ed Brill. He was the marketing. I can't remember his name, but not his name, his title. But he was one of the guys. We had huge, Walter Cronkite came and did a speech. Kevin Spacey. Okay, so but there's all kinds of really famous people used to come and talk at these.
Michael J. Fox, it looks like a bunch of folks.
Yeah, wow. Al Gore was there. All kinds of people.
He did invent the internet.
Yeah. Yes. And it was a massive event. I mean, it was one of the biggest events in the world. And IBM eventually bought Lotus, and then it became even bigger, and eventually just sort of, unfortunately, faded away in a way. But it was quite the technology at the time. Yeah. It was always in Orlando at the
Lotus lover.
It was at the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin hotels, which are still there. Yeah.
Cool.
And it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. I look forward to that event so much every year. But that's where I got into Java, and that's where I started working with Java. And I actually wrote a book called the Lotus Notes and Domino Programming Bible, and that actually led it to me writing the XML Programming Bible as well. Those are published by Wiley and available on Amazon. They still are. I don't know. I still have some copies if anyone wants one. But they're great for holding up your monitor. Two of them are just the right size. But that was cool stuff. But you mentioned one thing as well, music. And you mentioned pictures. So you couldn't find pictures, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that, because in the olden days, I actually got a camera here. This was, you had to haul around one of these with flash, and you took pictures. Yes, yeah, this is
A separate flash. I remember those.
As
Yeah.
someone who's had to
Absolutely, man. Yeah,
scan
shoot.
all of my physical photos recently, I can only imagine the incredible Lotus Sphere photos that exist out in the world that just haven't been scanned up to the internet. And this is our call to action. If you have any retro Lotus Sphere throwback photos, we want to see them.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
Tag us as 8-Bits Pod.
Please, please.
Love to see him.
Now, I remember around the time when Lotus was really at its height, I remember going to a couple of .NET events, and I came back from those events incredibly impressed. I was like, wow, they're doing all the things, because there's always deficiencies that you complain about the platform you're working with. Like, okay, we've taken it this far, and I was don't mean to sound modest, but after I'd written the book and worked in a lot of years of Lotus Notes and Domino, I'd pretty much know everything about it, and my knowledge was as good as it is ever going to get. And there were all kinds of things that were limitations, so you'd complain about them. And I went to a couple of .NET events, and I was just blown away. And I actually would come back to speak to my Lotus, colleagues, compatriots, whatever, and I tell them, wow, .NET has all this stuff that we've been talking about doing, and they, a lot of them hated me for saying that. But I was like, sorry, man, it's the truth. So that's when I sort of got into Java, XML, and also a little bit into .NET, but not much, to be honest. And Java was a big thing then back then as well. I mean, I don't know if you remember applets. Applets were this thing where that was the first iteration of Java, where Java was going to run on everything. And they had these things called applets. So if you look up Java applets, the idea is you're going to take your Java virtual machine and your application, and it's going to load onto someone else's computer, and it's going to run on their computer, right? So you have a Java runtime and the application, and it's just going to automatically load. The only problem was it was way ahead of its time, because there was the bandwidth was not great. So, you'd have a web page and it would have a Java applet on it. The web page would load, and then the little corner where the Java applet's going to load, it was just sitting there loading.
Right.
Loading. Yeah. And everyone did, there were a few complaints about that. And it just never got off the ground because of that. And then they started with servlets. So servlets was the next thing. And the idea behind that was, all right, applets didn't work, so now we're going to make something that runs on servers, but it's going to have a component that pulls data into your local machine as well. So it was like this. They were talking back in those days about fat clients, thin clients, all these client server things, and applets were fat clients, and then the others were thin clients, and a servlet would be kind of a thin client architecture, where you had most of the application processing running on a server, right? What used to be called middleware, and it would go and get data from a back end and compile it and organize it, and then it would serve it as a small piece of information to the client. And so that was what a servlet architecture was. And then a web, there's all kinds of things that came from that. Including, I'm trying to remember some of the names of things.
I just love the name applet. It's like a little,
Applet.
like a baby app, like a
little snack.
snack
App.
just a little appetizer, a little applet.
And then there were web services. So web services were these things you could create, and they would actually get built with WSDL, Web Services Description Language, SOAP. For those of you who might remember SOAP, Single Object Access. Oh God, I can't remember the name of the acronym now. But I used to do this stuff all the time. It was XML based. WSDL was XML. SOAP was XML. And you used to put these applications together, which were client server applications using this open source platform, written in Java and doing a whole bunch of other things. It was cool. But that's kind of the way things evolved on the Java side of things. And these days, of course, the applications on the servers, they have these web application servers, web apps with the Apache web app was the first one. And it was actually a processor that would run your Java on the server, serve up servlets, and load them into the cloud. Simple Object Access Protocol. Thank you, sir. Yes. Yeah, so that was something that was out. There was a whole bunch of different components of a web service out there, and the whole idea was these things were going to be componentized, and you could access things through Corba. I don't know if anyone remembers Corba. If anyone has the name of that acronym out there, let me know. Yeah,
with a K.
Corba. But yeah, it's that was another way of accessing web services, and that was kind of the way you built applications back then. But then the reason why I'm getting to that is .NET had this whole way of doing it, which was actually pretty good. As long as you had a Windows client and a Windows server, that was the catch, was you could actually use .NET to build things like this much more efficiently, and that was cool. But you mentioned pictures. Sorry, I digressed a bit there. But pictures, I mean, this is the digitization of the world, right? Pictures, music, videos. I remember, the reason why there's not many Lotosphere pictures out there is you'd have to take the picture with the camera, like this, my little XA camera, which is still a pretty good camera. And then you'd have to get the film developed. And once you got the film developed, if you had a scanner, you could scan the picture and put it on the web, right? And then digital cameras came along, but those were really expensive and bulky and not very practical at the time. And the resolution was terrible for the first probably 5 to 10 years. So if you actually wanted a useful picture that you could blow up bigger than a postcard, you still had to use a camera. A traditional camera with film and stuff.
And I vividly remember 1996. I know this was the year because the 101 Dalmatians live action film had just come out, and all I wanted to do was go to this website. So Disney Channel had just started putting websites on stuff to be like, you can learn more about the movie at disneychannel.com. And I remember begging my parents to let me go to this website, and this picture of Glenn Close with puppies, just like line by line, loading on dial-up internet, just like a way too high-res image, and remembering thinking as a kid, someday we're going to be able to see images on the internet, and it's not going to take an hour to download. Like, being able to support high-res images back in the 90s was no easy task.
No. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like a whole different world, right? You had your hobbyists with the digital cameras, and then you had your serious photographers with the traditional cameras. And there was a whole my sister actually was a film producer back then, and I remember she used to make films with what they call ends. So that you take the cut ends of film, strap them together, and they would actually make analog films this way. Instead, because she couldn't afford a full roll of film for herself. But then the digital came along, and she started being able to do things that were pretty cool with digital as well. But still, it was like really low res, and the professional cameras were these big, bulky digital cameras, like TV cameras, and they were thousands of dollars. And the bigger the camera, the more basically the more professional it was, right? So you had these cameras. I remember once again, Comdex and CES and stuff like that. You have these people following people around with a camera that was like literally like the size of an air conditioner, and they're carrying this thing around behind someone. And, it's just recording on tape, and then they have to take the tape to somewhere and have it uploaded via satellite link. And yeah, that was pretty cool.
Ended up on a very bizarre rabbit hole. Well, not that bizarre if you listen to the show or watch the show enough. But I was curious. I was thinking about the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, which is like 89, 92-ish era. And I was thinking about how did they film these movies? Like, today, I can just hop onto my computer and have a fake background on Teams pop up immediately by clicking a button. Yep. But I ended up finding all of this behind-the-scenes footage of filming these movies, and it's incredible to see, like, especially pre-digital, like, really having a grasp on that. What went into replacing backgrounds, green screen, how big the technology was that we use, and then being an actress previously in my life, driving around in a car and having them suction cup a video camera to, the window of a car and driving around the block. So it's incredible to see how making things go from analog to digital has not only just changed the way we're able to edit film, make it so there's a giant baby in Las Vegas in Honey, I Blew Up the Kids. But it's incredible how even just the size of the camera is just so drastically different. Like I remember my dad filming me with an over-the-shoulder camera as a kid, and now we have it in our phone. It's so crazy.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. So I can't remember the exact statistic, but there is a stat that says there are more pictures now produced every day or something than were created based from this date to the beginning of photography. Sort of because everyone has a movie camera and a picture camera on their phone now. It's all carried around with them with sound and everything. I mean, this was unthinkable back in the 90s even, that you could actually, it's never going to be a serious thing that you could actually make a professional video on a mobile device. It's always going to have something you plug it into and things like that. But no, it's pretty amazing now. I mean, and innovations that happen, as I mentioned before, MP3 for music. Shout out
to Napster. Spent a lot of time on LimeWire and Napster back in the day.
Yes, I remember. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when cassettes, were replaced by CD-ROMs, and the motion picture folks and the Recording Industry Association folks were up in arms about this because they thought that, the whole idea of people being able to play a single music track from a album was just completely against the philosophy of the artists who produced the album. They wanted to be able to create this event, this feeling, this impression, and it was about selling the whole album instead of a single song. But that was really what they were worried about, was that, oh my God, what's going to happen to our industry if we're not producing albums and selling entire albums? It goes back in, I'm sure people who've heard of albums and bought albums online, you listen to a few of the songs, not all of them. And so it's going to change. People used to I had to go down and buy an album, like a vinyl or cassette, which with 14 songs on it, for $22 at the local music store. And I would copy one of the songs onto CD-ROM. But that was like really, this was a really, really bad thing to the recording industry. And I guess, in terms of them making money, they were right.
Oh, but I was making some really cool mixtapes by copying these over for my friends. I'm like, this is our vacation mix. This is our summer playlist.
Yeah.
iTunes was a game changer for me.
Now mixtapes was like a big, that's the enemy of innovation as far as they were concerned, which is hilarious. But that was an interesting thing. And then when MP3s came out, they had the same complaints, right? Oh my God. So now people are going to be able to just copy an MP3 and they don't need the physical medium anymore, which is how the artist intended to send it. The artists are going, actually, we didn't intend that. It's just the way it has to be packaged. And we're totally okay with you guys using our songs, and, hopefully you pay us for them. But it's just an interesting progression of things. And it really has led to an explosion of music. And coming full circle now, music from the 80s is now coming off copyright. So I'm seeing a lot more dance music and stuff with 80s music mixed in. Some EDM and some other things are using tracks from I guess they always did, but they're using longer tracks now and hooks and things from 80s music, which is it's becoming more prevalent. I've noticed that as well. So, and I'm sure it does have to do with copyright.
Mariah Carey led the way with having a track from Talking Heads. Who knew that we would? I love that we're seeing more of that kind of synth wave, like 80s stuff come back into. Of course, for the younger folks, like, what is this new sound? For us, we're like, we love this.
I still have an old Radio Shack keyboard which
Yes.
produces electronic music, and it has a drum system built into it and stuff. And you can actually record and save things as God, what's the format before MP3? It's a
Is it
different
a
format.
MIDI?
Wave?
MIDI file, yes, yeah, you can save them as MIDI files, yeah. And so those are, hey, tying back into the title of the show, those are 8-bit files, 8 or 16, I think, that you could save, and they're really kind of cool. It produces a lot of stuff similar to what your intro music was, and
Yeah.
it's just very cool. It's yeah.
I think it's all
Yeah.
coming back. It's all like all of this. I keep getting a bunch of Instagram ads all the time, this shirt included, really harkening back to this like very, I love all the neon. I love all the design. I love Clippy, of course, making a big comeback in a big way, I'd like to think.
It's nostalgia is a powerful thing, I'm telling you. But
Yeah, I'm ready to get my old Walkman back out. And I used to run around our park. We had a park in our neighborhood in Sacramento, and I had a CD, like single CD player that I would run around with, but I'd have to keep it kind of level so it wouldn't skip.
yeah,
You didn't
And-
have electronic skip protection?
No, man.
ESP? Remember that when that came out? Game changer.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I just even remember around that time a bunch of toys coming out, like the Yak Back, the Tamagotchi, the Furby, like all of these things that, as a kid, we previously didn't have these digital. I don't know why this was so appealing. I was just looking at this earlier today, but these digital planners that were like
Yeah.
marketed towards kids to be like, put your contacts in it and like, So I think it's really interesting that when we were younger, these things were so new, and now babies are able to play on an iPad. It's incredible to see how exponentially tech has grown in even just the last century, really.
Absolutely.
Well, and
Absolutely.
like I said, Ethan, just how easy it's become to use. Like, I'll never forget my niece when she was 2 years old, just picking up an iPad and using it. Like, just didn't have to teach her anything. It was just all very intuitive. I was like, wow, that's a testament. If a 2-year-old can pick up your product and then just use it,
yeah.
that's a great product.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. And all the things that tie it together. Like Chloe, you mentioned, Tamagotchi and stuff.Ose things were like magic at the time. I mean, everyone thought about, digital as something that would have to be associated with some big box, or something.
Right.
To have a little digital thing that lives in this little tiny case and runs on a battery was just really something. I mean,
I couldn't believe. I thought that my cousin's Diva Stars toy had come to life. It was this toy. They look like they're dolls, and when you put on different clothes and accessories and hats, they would say and do different things. And similarly, I was like, a computer is a computer. It's a giant device. I don't understand. Is this toy possessed? Like, is it haunted? I don't know. But it's been incredible to see. Now you walk down the aisle at Target and almost everything has a smart element to it. Even the action figures like change color if they're nearby a certain beacon or something. So as someone who's very obsessed with toys, I just think it's so cool to see how much we've grown. Like, there are Lego sets now. I know we've got Jill in the chat. There's Nintendo Lego sets now that when you have the Lego Mario near certain things, it reacts a certain way. And I can't even, oh my gosh, don't even get me started. I'm an adult who buys a lot of Lego sets, but it's so cool. I get so excited to see with these kids having these toys now, what they're going to build. Like, can you even imagine? I'm thinking holograms, y'all. Clippy the hologram coming soon, I'm sure.
What?
Yeah,
Make it happen.
And the other thing I was going to mention, tie-ins to music as well. I remember, I'm once again old enough to remember like the first few days of MTV, and I was sitting in a little bar in, and not really supposed to be sitting in a bar, but I was. It's a small town, so we were out in this little bar in Penticton, British Columbia. The whole place is shut down now, so it's okay. We're not going to get in trouble. But we were watching this satellite. The satellites then had these massive dishes. They're like 40, 8 feet wide, and the hotel had a satellite TV. So that was a cool thing. We used to go down there and watch it. And they showed MTV, and they showed, tying back to the music I was talking about. Haircut 100 was the first. You guys probably don't know who Haircut 100 is, but that was an awesome band, man. Love Plus One, and And then I heard things like the Human League and Devo and Eurythmics, and this really was a big thing for my life. And I'm very interested to see how it's tied back. Like everyone takes for granted videos now on YouTube, but this was something really new and exciting. And it was a new way to sort of express music, was with imagery in a video, and to have a 3-minute format. And then, and now of course that video format is on YouTube everywhere. But I think that was kind of like the early days. Before that, TV was something where you had a bunch of producers and you had a huge cast and crew, and you would maybe have a band on as a guest, but you wouldn't have a video that would just show without any introduction, no interview with the band. It would just show the video, and they show one after the other with some commercials in between.
I'm thinking of just in particular the Take On Me video that was all animated, like how that must have been such a innovation. And now I just saw someone do an AR VR version of that with all the visuals. I know, crazy, right?
You can go in the music video?
Yes.
Wow.
That'd be awesome.
We've come so far. We come from watching it in a random bar to living it through VR. It's incredible.
And that's exactly what the guy does, right? Like the first couple seconds is real, actual video, and then he walks through a mirror and he's in animation. So yeah, that's exactly. That was probably the inspiration for the AI, right? Is the guy standing there and then he walks into this mirror and all of a sudden everything's animated. And
That's right.
So cool. Oh my gosh. Well, we are almost at the end of the show, Brian, and I want to make sure people know where they can find you and tell us about your awesome show that you're doing every week.
Yeah, so we don't talk about any of this stuff on my show, which is The Launch Space. Maybe we should start weaving some of it in. I'll see what I can do. But it's called The Launch Space, aka.ms/The Launch Space. It's on Thursdays at 1 p.m. on Microsoft Learn TV. So if you go to aka.ms/The Launch Space, you'll see the upcoming shows, which is actually happening. The next one's happening tomorrow, and it's all about the Power Apps Solution Architecture Certification, which is a nice segue. But yeah, it's we talk about the latest launches, releases, and offerings on Azure. It's an hour show once a week. You can check out the archives. Get some cool stuff there too. But yeah, it's called The Launch Space. Thank you. aka.ms/The Launch Space. That's
and check it out. Like we were talking about earlier in the show, Microsoft's got a lot of things coming for all kinds of developers, especially on Azure. I work at Microsoft and can't keep up. And so thank you, Brian, for hosting The Launch Space so that we can all at least try to keep up.
Go get the scoop every week from Brian. And Brian, I feel like we got to bring you back for part 3. Like, how can we possibly cover everything in 2 episodes? We got to get to part 3 here. And thank you so much for coming back and talking to us about the days of what was the what was the acronym that we had? The days of soap.
The days of soap. Back when we all used soap.
Now we use a different kind of soap. All right. Well, that'll be all from us today, y'all. We will see you next time on 8 Bits. Thanks for joining us.